with you. I have my special guest. He's a fractional COO for SMBs looking to scale 5 times over the next 2 3 years. None other than Mr. Bryan Baker.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome, Mr. Bryan on Book One Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I primarily work with small businesses that are looking to scale. Growth is one thing, but looking to scale, 5 or 10x over the next several years, that is something that I can really help with. Specifically, companies where the founder is still primarily the operational head or someone who is running a lot through them specifically as the founder. I'm looking to build scalable and repeatable processes, install accountability mechanisms through the managers, and then be able to realign KPIs. I can do that for small businesses, and I can also work with larger businesses on a consulting basis.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Bryan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about most founders don't understand KPIs. You state most founders don't truly understand KPIs. What is the single most dangerous or common misconception you see? Is that they are measure the wrong things, or is it the deeper misunderstanding of KPIs' purpose in guiding business?
Yeah, I believe that many times with KPIs, they are looking at too many things. So they'll have like a dozen or 2 dozen or more uh, KPIs that they're looking at on a regular basis. I say metrics because really what a KPI is the most important metrics, the ones that are most critical to the business. And so what happens is they get a little bit too focused on too many things, and that is pulling them in too many different directions. And so focusing in just on a few main KPIs that instantly tell you if you're winning or losing, and then also realigning those KPIs to the new SOPs, right? Focusing on what will actually move the business. That's those are some things that I like to focus on.
Interesting, Mr. Bryan. So let's talk about the narrative versus the number. How does the founder's natural attachment to the company's story or vision actively interfere with the selecting objective, often harsh? Key performance indicators. How do you help them separate the identity from the data?
Yeah, um, the data can sometimes be confusing, especially if their CRM doesn't have a good tool for it, or they're using a third party and the data is maybe not trusted. So there's a couple things that could be factors there. So certainly factoring in what people are saying, like managers and directors and people on the ground are saying is happening versus what the actual data says. Um, the key is to obviously do a combination of the both, but you want to have your data be as accurate as possible. You want it to be as timely as possible, and you need to have it be as visible as possible.
Certainly. So the vanity versus the sanity, Mr. Bryan. The vanity metric traps is famous. Beyond just a follower count or a total revenue, what are the sum of the more insidious vanity metric that savvy founders still fall for because they feel like real KPIs?
Yeah. So one of the big ones is gross margins, right? So they're looking at gross profit margins, saying, hey, things look pretty good. Maybe it's even growing, but the net profit margin may not be. So that's one that gets in the way. I think. I mean, every business is different in terms of what would be one of those vanity ones, but some examples would be, a customer satisfaction metric, but um, it's only skewed because of the way the question is asked, or um, if the customer expresses any sort of dissatisfaction, they're not given a survey. So those types of things can really skew those metrics to look really great, maybe to an external, VC capital, someone who they're trying to impress, stockholders, whatever it may be. But the reality is, on the boots on the ground, the customers are not happy with the service or the process. So really trying to avoid skewing the data, and also trying to really dial in net profit margin versus that gross profit margin.
Let's talk about the lagging versus the leading dilemma. Founders often focus on lagging indicators like quarterly revenue. And how do you teach them to identify the trust the leading indicators that actually predict the future revenue, especially when those leading signals might be weak or unclear early on?
Yeah, so lagging indicators are always. I always say they're a good indication of how you did, but it does not give you a it's not good for forecasting the future, right? So the leading indicators, those have to be dialed in properly. So that's where the KPIs have to be accurate, they have to be timely, they have to be visible. And you're going to be definitely talking with, um, making sure that your data is good coming out of your CRM. So those are all super important. But to be able to get good leading indicators of where you're headed, you're going to need, some good operational foresight. You're going to need some good financial foresight. You're going to be able to use all of the tools that are at your disposal to be able to provide good indications and forecasts for the future. And that can be done. You just have to make sure you have a good operational and financial baseline to be able to make good predictions based on past performance.
It's in the performance for sure. So the strategic and operational pitfalls, Mr. Brian. How does a lack of companies wide integrated KPIs where marketing, sales, or production metrics don't connect create internal conflict, wasted resources, and founder who cannot see the true business engine?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of it. That's a lot to unpack. There are a lot of operational pitfalls that can happen when you don't have alignment like that between the different departments. I think the one that comes to mind the most, the one that I see most often, the one that is the most troublesome pitfall of them all, is the founder being the bottleneck. Now, this is a touchy subject, right? Because um, it's very difficult for a founder to let some processes go, right? I mean, it's like letting your baby go. It's not an easy thing to do. um, and what a founder or CEO of a company did to get to $1 million or $2 million is impressive. It's something that should be commended, and you're in a small group of people who've made it that far, and that's great. But the reality is, what got you to a million or what $2 million will not get you to 10 or 20 or 100. That's for absolute certain. You can't build a really successful company large scale, bootstrapping it the way you did to get to a million. So the biggest thing I see as a pitfall is figuring, hey, I'm just going to do I'm going to do 10x of whatever I did to get that 10x. Whatever I did to go to a million, all I have to do is 10x that to get to 10 million. It just doesn't work that way. It's you're going to wear everybody out in the process. Everybody is going to be burnt out. They're going to be quitting on you. Even co-founders are going to be, they're going to be exiting for the doors because you can't do that long term. And then you're also going to destroy your margins, right? So you're going to be throwing more and more people at problems instead of building processes to help those scale. And gross part, not even your net profit, but your gross profit margin will start to slip because again, you're band-aiding everything as you go along. So um, that's probably the biggest one is operational.
No, Mr. Brian is being disconnected. While we're waiting for him, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in a sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, a movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season, science 101, sex 101, a fourth season, and of course, spiritual awakening 101, trivia 101, law 101, mental health 101, motivation 101, entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Brian, while you're not around, I'll just inviting our listeners to support my other podcast. So, my next question is, a seed stage startup and a series of a big company needed different KPIs. What is the classic example of a metric founder clings to form an earlier stage and becomes actively misleading or harmful to the company's sales?
Yeah, so those early stages are a lot different than the later stages, right? So they're you're getting multiple. You're talking about multiple series of funding. Those first bootstrap days, just about anything works and just about anything goes. So the next series or the next as things begin to progress, um, it becomes quite clear that there has to be much more structure. So that's again, that's where the founder led problems begin, is because the what got them there won't move them forward. So what they have to do is they have to then start to segment out and start to bring in other people, and that can get very expensive. And in the early stages of, even when you get to 10 or 20 million, that can still be very expensive. And so that's where fractionals like myself can come in, other fractionals as well, where you can get that experience, but not necessarily have to have the full cost. And so the biggest difference between the two is structure, is building and defining that structure.
Defining, well, just give me a minute. Defining that structure is something else. So let's talk about the human behavior hurdles, Mr. Brian. Data as security blanket. Do you see founders sometimes using a proliferation, yes, proliferation of KPIs or dashboard overload as we to feel in control, while actually avoiding the difficult strategic decisions one or two core of the metrics might be screaming for?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is to again really define what success looks like when going after that particular data. I mean, clearly a metric just to provide a metric doesn't really provide any value. It has to be something where that that metric is aligned with a specific SOP, whether it's a sales function, whether it's an operational function. It doesn't really matter. HR. It doesn't matter what necessarily. I mean, it does, but I mean, each one of those specifically you have to make sure that that KPI, that data, is aligned with a specific process and specific outcome. I should say. And then that way you know really instantly if you're winning or losing on that outcome. So if it's an HR, for example, and um, you're really struggling with hiring, right? So you're looking at the people you're hiring, and the turnover is really high on the employee side, and the target metric is you want to get a certain number of um, certain number of hires per quarter for a particular position, uh, and you're finding yourself constantly uh, far exceeding that number. You're having to spend a lot more time and resources and training to be able to go far beyond that. Then that's when you realize that you probably have something wrong with your training process, right? So there's something wrong with how they're trained and onboarded, because obviously you're losing them too fast. And so because with any company, the training process is the first impression with that company. And so you're going to lose a lot of people during the training or right immediately after the training if it did not go well. So recruitment is definitely tied to things like training and performance. Obviously, there's other indicators, of course, benefits and compensation packages and things like that. But I think those are less important than the structure that the company has built, and makes people feel like that they are where they should be, and feel like they can grow. So um, I guess that was a long way of saying that really comes down to you've got to tie every KPI to a specific outcome, and you got to be able to measure it, and the data has to be accurate, and then it'll tell you what you need to know.
Mr. Bryan, as a fractional CEO, what are your short-term and long-term goals as well as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so my specific goals for companies is I want to help them grow. I want to help them scale at a really fast pace, but do it well. I really want to help companies build scalable and repeatable processes that they can get to $100 million if necessary, um, and be able to create accountability mechanisms and be able to create those aligned KPIs. That's what I'm focused on. Really, it's a wide range of companies that I can work with, but I will say that that's my primary goal. Is I want to help these companies be successful.
Definitely. Good luck to your goals, Mr. Bryan, and looking forward for more success. And what will be a piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Yeah, just go for it. It's a little bit tricky to get the ball rolling, but really, it's the key is to position yourself as the expert and be able to provide the experience and the know-how that they're looking for, and that will lead into some great opportunities.
Certainly, great opportunities indeed. So, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, um, there are a couple books that I think are really effective. I like Vern Harnish's Scaling Up. Also, the 10 Rockefeller Habits. Speaking of habits, I really love the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I know it's a very old book, but it's still very effective. Um, and yeah, one other one I would say is important is The Coaching Habit by Michael Stanier. Another one where it really helps teach you how to coach people, and not be micromanaging, but more being able to be a good leader who is. So those are some great book options as you're trying to grow your business.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Bryan. So let's talk about the pivot signals based on the KPIs patterns. How can a founder distinguish between a tactical problem not to fix our conversational funnel and a strategic problem or our core hypothesis about the market is wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Tactical problems are a lot different than strategic problems, and so really the biggest differentiator is um, really, I guess the best way to say that is when you're doing a good strategy, you'll know it's working when everybody's aligned with that. So your customers are aligned, your C-suite is aligned, co-founders, investors. But when it comes to tactical alignment, that's a lot different, right? Because um, the, those are where it's like boots on the ground. Those are the actual people who are doing the work, and those things can become a lot more nuanced. And so there needs to be a lot of flexibility on the tactical part, where strategic, it's, you got to make some tweaks here and there, but you don't typically go into a strategy session where everyone's aligned and then now you want to do something completely different later on. I mean, that does happen, but it's pretty rare. Where tactically, it's, well, the tactics can change all the time, right? One 10, 15 years ago, cold calling was great for sales. Now it's much more relationship building. So and networking and things like that. So um, tactics can change. They change. I mean, they don't change frequently, but they do change and need to be changed. And so that's why you got to make sure you're keeping up with like the common ways people are doing things tactically, and always be willing to make small course corrections along the way for tactical stuff. And then strategy is just little tiny tweaks. It's not, if you've got a good strategy, stick with that. But tactics, those can change quite a bit.
Mr. Brian, your own KPIs wake up call. From your experience, what was the most painful or enlightening lesson you learned about the real power or danger of misuse KPIs?
That's a good one. Um, yeah, probably. I was working with a call center, and we had a specific KPI that we thought was really effective. Right, it told us the total number of appointments per hour that the agent would set, and we thought, okay, if they are setting X number of appointments per hour, which was like, I think it was 3 or 4, then like, oh, they're automatically a rock star no matter what they're doing. Well, the reality was, and in some cases that was at least an indicator of how hard they were working, but it wasn't necessarily an indicator of how effective they were. And so it made it clear we had to not only find out the appointments per hour, but we also had to cross reference that to customer satisfaction. So we would talk to our customers who were the insurance agents, and they were trying to get appointments, you know, for to meet with their clients. And what it became clear is that customer satisfaction did not always equal the number of appointments they were getting. And so that's when we realized we had to cross-reference that customer satisfaction with the appointments per hour to be able to find out really how good they were. Because if the client showed up to the agent's office and they had no idea why they were there, they just came because they were told to come there. They didn't know if they were being canceled. They didn't know if there was something wrong with their policies or if they owed money. Where the ones that made really good appointments, they knew exactly what they were there for. They were happy to be there. They were excited to be there. They wanted to learn from the agent, and so it created a completely different situation. So it was a good metric to, at least on the how hard they're hustling, but it wasn't a good metric on how effective they were. So that's why we had to really dive in and cross reference those metrics to be able to get some good data.
Pop up discussion for the Mr. Brian, the one page manifesto. If you could give a new founder a one-page guide titled "How to Think About KPIs," what are the three headlines or immutable principle on that page?
So yeah, three bullet points for a one pager on good KPIs. So the first bullet point would be obviously accurate. I mean, you got to have good data. Garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have good data, it doesn't help anybody. So verify the data. Pull those metrics manually from the CRM or from whatever you're using. Cross reference it to what's actually happening and confirm the data is good. That would say that was probably the most important thing. Second thing is make it visible to everybody. There should be no secrets to anybody in the company on what how the company is doing on specific KPIs. So obviously the HR team doesn't necessarily need to know what the sales team is doing, but everybody on the HR team who's involved in certain things need to know their team's metrics. So make sure it's visible to the right people and that there's no secrets to that department. There should be no questions on there. And then biggest thing is just again tying, and I think I mentioned this before, is tying those KPIs to outcomes, something that can be measured. Effort is great. We love effort, but the outcome is what actually matters in business. And if the outcome is not good, we need to be able to have the KPIs be able to tell us that. If the outcomes are fantastic, we also need to be able to look at that as well and be able to tell instantly if you're winning or losing. I always say you want to have your KPIs look like the dashboard of your vehicle, right? So you can tell instantly if you're able to continue driving or not. You can look at pressure, gas, all those things, and they'll tell instantly if you're winning or losing. So that's what your KPIs.
Very well said, Mr. Brian, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite the listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you want to promote on Book 101?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, you can look for me at getexecutivesnow.com. The website's up there now. I can be reached at Bryan, Bryan, at getexecutivesnow.com. I'd love to be able to give you a free consult, help you with your business, see what I can do to help you scale your business and get going in the right direction. Appreciate your time today, Daniel.
Yes, yes, people, let's support Mr. Bryan Baker because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering business like this to rise. So, Mr. Bryan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Martica people, see you soon.